Hey everyone! Welcome back to another spine-chilling story on the channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the dusty halls of an old newsroom in small-town Ohio, where a new guy named Jake learns the hard way that some workplaces have rules you don't break. Think flickering lights, locked doors, and a creepy little notebook that knows more than it should. This is the curse of the newsroom, and it's gonna make you rethink staying late at the office. So, grab a snack, turn down the lights, and let's dive in. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this eerie tale. The Dayton Chronicle's newsroom smelled like old paper and stale coffee, its red brick walls soaking up the hum of clacking keyboards and ringing phones. Tucked in downtown Dayton, Ohio, the building was a relic, with creaky wooden stairs and windows that rattled in the wind. Jake Turner, fresh out of journalism school at 24, didn't mind the outdated vibe. He'd landed his first real job here, editing stories for a small-town paper, and he was hungry to prove himself. The cluttered desks, the stacks of yellowed newspapers, the ancient printer that groaned like it was dying, it all felt like a chance to make his mark. He sat up at a corner desk by a foggy window, his laptop glowing, ready to dive in. Jake was a city kid from Columbus, used to late nights and big dreams, but Dayton was quieter, slower, with streets that emptied out after dark. His co-workers were nice enough, gruff but friendly, tossing around jokes about deadlines and bad coffee. Linda, a veteran editor with graying hair and sharp eyes, took him under her wing, showing him how to cut a rambling op-ed down to size. "Work hard, but don't burn out," she said, her smile tight. Jake nodded, already planning to stay late, and polish his first assignment, a piece on the local county fair. He wanted to impress, to show he wasn't just some rookie. The day flew by in a blur of edits and phone calls. By 5 p.m., the newsroom started clearing out, reporters grabbing coats and muttering about dinner plans. Linda lingered at Jake's desk, her voice low. "Don't stay past 7, okay? This place has rules. Everyone follows them." Jake chuckled, thinking it was some newsroom hazing. "Sure thing, Linda," he said, winking. She didn't smile back, just grabbed her purse and left. Jake kept typing, the hum of the fluorescent lights his only company. The story was good, but it needed work, and he wasn't about to half-ass his first week. Around 6, his eyes got heavy, the words blurring on the screen. He leaned back just for a second and dozed off, head on his folded arms. When he woke, the newsroom was dark, the only light coming from a street lamp outside, casting shadows across the desks. His phone said 9:07 p.m., and its battery was dead. The screen black. "Crap," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. The office was silent. No keyboards, no phones, just the faint whistle of wind through the old windows. He stood, stretching, and called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice echoed, unanswered. The front door was locked, the deadbolt heavy, and cold. He banged on it, yelling for the security guard, but no one came. The building felt empty, like it was holding its breath. Jake tried the lights, but the switches did nothing. A sign by the breaker box read, "Power off after 7 p.m. for fire safety." Great. His phone charger was useless without juice, and the landlines were dead too. He grabbed his jacket, figuring he'd find another exit. The back door was bolted shut, the fire escape sealed with a rusty padlock. Every window was either locked or too high to reach without a ladder. His heart started to race, the darkness pressing in. "Come on," he whispered, jogging up the creaky stairs to check the second floor. The storage rooms, the break room, the editor's office, all locked tight. Back in the newsroom, he slumped at his desk, trying to think. That's when he heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone typing on a keyboard, coming from the far end of the room. He froze, his breath shallow. "Linda? That you?" No answer, just the tapping, steady and deliberate. He grabbed a flashlight from his bag. Thank God he'd kept it, and shone it across the desks. The beam caught stacks of papers, a tipped-over coffee mug, but no one was there. The typing stopped, sudden and sharp, like a radio switched off. Jake's skin prickled. He wasn't alone. He swept the flashlight under his desk, half expecting a rat or a prankster, and saw something else, a small leather notebook tucked against the wall. Not his. He pulled it out, the cover worn. The word "rules" scratched into it in faded black ink. His stomach twisted. Linda's warning echoed in his head. This place has rules. He opened the notebook. The pages yellowed and brittle, and read, the first line in spidery handwriting, "Don't look in mirrors after 7 p.m. His eyes flicked to the next. If you hear knocking, don't answer. Don't open the door. There were 5 rules total, each weirder than the last, ending with, if you see a shadow in the editor's office, leave the building now. Jake laughed, nervous, and closed the book. Real funny, guys, he said to the empty room, but his voice shook. The newsroom felt colder now, the shadows sharper. He stuffed the notebook in his pocket, grabbed his flashlight, and headed for the front door again, banging harder. Hey, I'm stuck in here. Nothing. He turned, the beam of his flashlight dancing across the walls, and caught a flicker of movement, something by the editor's office door, gone when he blinked. His heart thudded. The rules were a joke, right? Just some stupid prank for the new guy. But the silence wasn't right. It was too heavy, like the building was waiting for something. Jake backed toward his desk, the flashlight shaking in his hand, and heard it again, the typing, faster now, coming from the dark corner where nobody sat. He swung the light over, and the sound stopped, but a single sheet of paper lay on the floor, fresh from the printer, with one word typed in bold. Stay. Jake's breath caught. He wasn't imagining this. Something was in the newsroom with him, and it knew he was here. The sheet of paper with stay typed in bold stared up from the newsroom floor, its edges curling in the dim glow of Jake Turner's flashlight. The Dayton Chronicle's office was a maze of shadows, desks looming like tombstones in the dark. His heart hammered, the silence broken only by the faint creak of the old building settling. The tapping sound, the ghostly typing that had lured him to that corner, was gone. But the air felt wrong, thick and cold, like the newsroom was watching him. The leather notebook in his pocket, with its weird rules, seemed to pulse, daring him to open it again. He wanted to laugh it off, call it a prank. But the word stay wasn't a joke. Something was in here with him, and it wasn't human. He backed away from the paper, his sneakers squeaking on the hardwood floor, and swung his flashlight across the room. The beam caught a flicker of movement, something darting past the editor's office door, too fast to see. His stomach twisted. Linda's warning, the one he'd brushed off, echoed in his head. Don't stay past 7, this place has rules. He pulled the notebook from his pocket, its cover rough under his fingers, the word rules scratched into the leather like a scar. He opened it again, the pages crackling, and read the list under the flashlight's glow. Don't look in mirrors after 7 p.m. If you hear a knocking, don't answer. Don't open the door. Don't pick up papers that fall on the floor. Turn off the computer if it starts typing on its own. If you see a shadow in the editor's office, leave the building now. Jake's throat went dry. He glanced at the paper. On the floor, its stay glaring, and realized he'd already broken Rule 3 by touching it up. Great job, man, he muttered, his voice shaking. The rules were nuts, something you'd find in a haunted house, not a newsroom in Ohio. But that typing, the movement, he couldn't explain it. He stuffed the notebook back in his pocket, his hands clammy, and called out, "If this is a prank, it's not funny." His words echoed, unanswered, the silence heavier than before. He needed to get out. The front door was still locked, the windows too sturdy to break without a sledgehammer. He grabbed his flashlight and headed for the stairs, figuring the second floor might have an unlocked window or a fire escape that wasn't rusted shut. The wooden steps groaned under his weight, each creak like a warning. Halfway up, he heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from the floor above. Not heavy, like a guard's boots, but light, like someone tiptoeing. He froze, the flashlight shaking in his hand. "Who's there?" he called. The footsteps stopped, but no one answered. His heart pounded, Linda's warning ringing louder. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched dark and narrow, lined with storage rooms and a break room that smelled like burnt coffee. He checked each door, locked every one. The footsteps didn't come again, but the air was colder up here, his breath fogging in the flashlight's beam. He turned to head back down when a new sound stopped him. 3 sharp knocks, coming from the storage room at the hall's end. Knock, 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 even measured, like someone waiting to be let in. The notebook's second rule flashed in his mind. If you hear a knocking, don't answer. He backed away, his sneakers silent, and the knocking came again, louder, faster. Jake bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping, and skidded into the newsroom. His desk was as he'd left it, but the paper with stay was gone, like it had never been there. He swept the flashlight across the floor, finding nothing but dust and a stray paperclip. "This isn't real," he whispered, but his voice cracked. He sat at his desk, trying to calm down, and pulled out the notebook again. Flipping past the rules, he found a new page, one he hadn't noticed before, with a single line in red, ink. "They watch from the shadows. Don't let them write." His stomach lurched. Who wrote this? And what did it mean by write? He needed to do something, anything. He grabbed a pen and his own notebook, the one he used for story notes, and started jotting down what had happened, the locked doors, the typing, the rules. Writing kept his hands steady, his mind focused. But as he wrote, his computer flickered to life, its screen glowing blue despite the power being off. The cursor blinked, then typed, slow and deliberate. "Jake, why are you here?" He shoved his chair back, the screech echoing, and yanked the power cord from the wall. The screen went black, but the words burned in his mind. He stood, flashlight in one hand, pen in the other, and heard a new sound, a rustling like papers falling, from the editor's office across the room. The door was ajar, though he swore it had been closed. The notebook's fifth rule screamed in his head. "If you see a shadow in the editor's office, leave now." He aimed his flashlight, the beam trembling, and saw it, a shadow, tall and thin, moving across the office's glass window, like someone pacing. No one was inside, no one he could see, but the shadow kept moving, slow and deliberate, its edges too sharp, too wrong. Jake's legs felt like jelly, but he couldn't leave. The doors were locked, the windows sealed. He backed toward the front door, keeping the flashlight on the editor's office, and tripped over a stack of papers that hadn't been there before. They scattered, some blank, some with old headlines, but one caught his eye. A single sheet with a black footprint, smudged, like ink but too perfect, too human. The third rule: don't pick up papers that fall. He stepped over it, his pulse racing, and banged on the front door again, shouting, "Somebody, please!" The shadow in the editor's office stopped moving, and the newsroom went quiet, too. Quiet. He turned, the flashlight sweeping the room, and saw his computer screen flicker back on, though the cord was still unplugged. The cursor typed again. "You shouldn't have stayed." Jake's breath hitched. He grabbed a chair, ready to smash a window. Rules be damned, but a new sound stopped him. Whispering, soft and urgent, coming from the editor's office, like a meeting in progress. Voices, too many to count, overlapped. Not in English, but something older, sharper, like static with teeth. He dropped the chair, his hands shaking, and ducked under his desk, clutching the notebook, the flashlight pressed to his chest. Whatever was in that office knew his name, and it wasn't letting him go. The whispers from the editor's office slithered through the dark, a tangle of voices that weren't quite human, curling around Jake Turner like smoke. He crouched under his desk in the Dayton Chronicle's newsroom, his flashlight pressed against his chest, its beam flickering. The leather notebook with its creepy rules was clutched in his sweaty hand, its weight heavier than it should be. The computer screen, unplugged but glowing, still burned with the words, "You shouldn't have stayed," though he hadn't dared look again. The shadow he'd seen pacing in the editor's office, tall, sharp, wrong, had gone still, but the air was thick, like the building was holding its breath, waiting for his next move. Jake's heart pounded so loud he was sure it could hear him. He wanted to run, to smash a window and climb out, but the newsroom's doors were locked, the windows too tough, and the whispering kept him frozen. The notebook's rules looped in, his head, especially the fifth. "If you see a shadow in the editor's office, leave the building now." Too late for that. He'd already broken the third rule by touching that paper with "stay" on it, and now the second rule, don't answer. Knocking felt like a trap he'd barely dodged. The knocks from the storage room upstairs had stopped, but the whispers were worse, a chorus of voices saying his name. Jake, Jake, like they knew him, like they'd always known him. He peeked over the desk, the flashlight's beam trembling across the newsroom. The editor's office door was still ajar, its glass window dark, no shadow moving now. The whispers had faded, but the silence was just as bad, heavy and wrong. He needed to do something, anything but sit here, waiting for whatever was in that office to come for him. He flipped open the notebook, his hands shaking, and scanned past the rules to that chilling line in red ink. They watch from the shadows. Don't let them write. Below it, a new page, one he hadn't seen before, had a date, October 15th, 1929, and a single sentence. The scribe feeds on stories, and we are its ink. Jake's stomach churned. 1929? That was almost a century ago. What was this place? Remembered Linda mentioning an old fire at the paper, something about a tragedy nobody liked to talk about. The notebook was no prank, it was a warning, tied to something older, something bad. He stuffed it in his pocket, grabbed his flashlight, and stood, his legs wobbly. He couldn't stay under the desk forever. The front door was still locked, but the editor's office, where the shadow had been, might have a phone that worked, or a window he could break. The fifth rule screamed in his head, but he was trapped anyway. "Screw it," he whispered, and crept toward the office, the flashlight's beam slicing through the dark. The newsroom felt smaller now, the desks closer, the shadows sharper. He passed a mirror on Linda's desk, a small round one she used to fix her hair, and remembered the first rule: don't look in mirrors after 7 p.m. He turned away, but not before catching a glimpse. Not his face, but something else, pale and eyeless, smiling too wide. He gasped, stumbling back, and the mirror fell, shattering on the floor. The whispers surged, louder, angrier, coming from the editor's office now, like a meeting gone wrong. "Jake, you shouldn't," they hissed, the words twisting into static. He reached the office door, its glass cold under his fingers, and pushed it open. The room was small, cluttered with bookshelves, a heavy oak desk, and a single window boarded up tight. No phone, no easy exit. The air was sour, like damp. Earth and the shadows seemed to move, curling at the edges of his flashlight's beam. On the desk was a stack of papers, old and yellowed, one with a headline: "Fire Devastates Dayton Chronicle, 5 Dead, 1929. Jake's heart skipped. He grabbed it, scanning the text. A head editor, Amos Reed, had set the fire, killing himself, and 4 co-workers. The article called it madness, but a handwritten note in the margin said, "The scribe made us write." Before he could read more, the papers scattered, like a gust of wind had blown through, though the window was sealed. They fell to the floor, each marked with a black footprint, smudged but perfect, like the one he'd seen earlier. The third rule, "Don't pick them up," rang in his head, but he couldn't stop himself. He grabbed one, and the whispers turned to laughter, sharp and cruel, echoing from the walls. The paper burned his fingers, not hot but cold, and he dropped it, his hand stinging. The laughter stopped, and the room went quiet, but the desk's chair creaked, spinning slowly, like someone had just stood up. Jake backed toward the door, his flashlight flickering, and heard a new sound: typing, fast and frantic, from the newsroom. He stumbled out, slamming the office door, and saw his computer screen glowing again, the cursor flying across a blank document. "Jake, tell our story. Write or join us." He lunged for the keyboard, hitting the power button, but the screen stayed on, the words looping, faster, louder in his head. The fourth rule: turn off the computer if it starts typing. He yanked every cord, smashed the monitor with a stapler, but the typing didn't stop. It came from other desks now, a chorus of keyboards clacking in the dark. He ran to the front door, banging with both fists, screaming, "Let me out!" The building shook, a low rumble like thunder, and papers flew from desks, swirling around him, all marked with black footprints. He tripped, falling hard, and saw a new paper by his hand, the words scrawled in red: "You can't leave." The whispers were everywhere now, not just from the editor's office, but the walls, the floor, the air, chanting, "Write, Jake, write." He crawled to his desk, his flashlight dead, the only light coming from the glowing screens, all typing the same thing: "Join us." Jake grabbed his notebook, the one he'd been writing in, and saw his own words changing, twisting into something else. Not his handwriting, but spidery, like the rules. "No, no, no," he muttered, tearing the page out. But it burned his fingers, cold again, and the torn pieces floated up, sticking to the ceiling, spelling, "Stay." He ducked under his desk again, his breath ragged, the whispers closing. The typing deafening. The shadow from the editor's office was back. Not in the office, but here, in the newsroom, its shape stretching across the wall, too tall, too thin, reaching for him. The shadow stretched across the newsroom wall, its edges sharp and jagged, reaching for Jake Turner like a claw. He was curled under his desk at the Dayton Chronicle, the flashlight dead in his hand, the air so cold it burned his lungs. The whispers, dozens of voices chanting, "Right, Jake, right," swirled around him, coming from the walls, the ceiling, the glowing computer screens that typed on their own despite being unplugged. Torn pages from his notebook hung on the ceiling, spelling "Stay" in spidery red ink. The leather notebook with its creepy rules was still in his pocket, its weight like a stone, and the black footprints on scattered papers seemed to pulse, alive and watching. Jake's chest heaved, his mind racing. Whatever the scribe was, it wanted him, and it wasn't letting him go. The shadow moved closer, its shape twisting, not just tall but wrong. Too many arms, too many eyes glinting in the dark. Jake scrambled out from under the desk, his sneakers slipping on papers, and bolted for the front door, banging on it with both fists. "Somebody please!" he shouted, his voice raw, but the door didn't budge, and the whispers laughed, sharp and cruel. The computer screens flickered, typing faster. "Join us, Jake. Tell our story." He spun around, the shadow now blocking the path to the editor's office, its form pulsing like smoke. The rules from the notebook screamed in his head, especially the fifth. "If you see a shadow in the editor's office, leave now." He'd seen it, and he was still here, trapped. He needed answers. The article about the 1929 fire, the note about the scribe. It wasn't just history, it was happening again. He grabbed the leather notebook, his hands shaking, and flipped past the rules to the page about the fire. A new line had appeared, written in red ink that smelled like rust. "The scribe feeds on stories. Amos Reed gave his soul to keep it alive. You're next." Jake's stomach lurched. Amos Reed, the editor who burned the newsroom, killing himself, and 4 others. Was that what the scribe wanted? His soul, his stories, forever? The whispers surged. "Right, Jake." And his hand twitched, like it wanted to grab a pen. He dropped the notebook, backing away, but his feet moved wrong, stepping toward the editor's office, like something was pulling him. "No, no," he muttered, digging his nails into his palms, the pain snapping him back. The shadow pulsed, its eyes gleaming, and the floor shook, papers swirling in a wind that wasn't there. He remembered the article's note. "The scribe made us write." Was that what the typing was? The scribe, forcing its victims to feed it stories, trapping them in the newsroom forever? He had to fight it. He grabbed a chair, ready to smash a window, but his arms froze, the chair slipping from his hands. The whispers turned to a voice, deep and rough, not in his ears but his head. "Write, or join them." His eyes flicked to the editor's office, where the shadow now stood in the doorway, its form clearer. A man, maybe Amos, in an old suit, his face a blur of eyes and teeth. Jake's legs moved again, not his choice, carrying him toward the office. He fought, grabbing a desk, but his body wasn't his own, like a puppet on strings. Inside the editor's office, the air was sour, like wet dirt. The oak desk was empty, but the chair spun slowly, and a pen on the desk rolled, stopping at a blank sheet of paper. The shadow was gone, but the whispers were louder, chanting, "Tell our story." Jake's hand reached for the pen, his fingers shaking, but he saw something. A photo tucked under a book on the shelf, showing 5 people in 1920s clothes, smiling outside the newsroom. One was circled in red, labeled Amos. Their eyes were wrong, too dark, like they'd seen what Jake was seeing now. He tore his hand from the pen, pain shooting through him, and grabbed the photo instead. The whispers screamed, "No!" and the papers on the desk flew, slashing at his arms, leaving thin, cold cuts. He stumbled back, the photo clutched tight, and saw a new paper on the floor, marked with a black footprint and red ink. "You can't stop the story." The door slammed shut, locking him in, and the pen started writing on its own, scrawling words across the blank sheet. Jake Turner, new editor, stayed too late. He lunged for the paper, tearing it in half, but the pen kept writing, on the desk now, carving words into the wood. "Join us!" Jake's vision blurred, his body heavy, like the scribe was inside him, pushing him to write. He remembered the rules. Turn off the computer if it starts typing. But this wasn't a computer, and he'd broken too many rules already. He grabbed the notebook from his pocket, desperate, and found a new page, written in his own handwriting, though he hadn't done it. To stop the scribe, burn the rules but pay the price. The room shook, the whispers turning to a roar, and the shadow reappeared, not in the doorway, but behind him, its cold breath on his neck. Jake spun, swinging the flashlight, but it passed through nothing, and the shadow laughed, its voice Amos's, maybe, or something older. He tore pages from the notebook, the rules, the warnings, and stuffed them in his pocket, his hands trembling. He had to burn them, but how? No matches, no lighter, and the building was a prison. He tried the door, but it wouldn't budge. The window, boarded up, was his only shot. He grabbed a paperweight, a heavy glass globe, and smashed it against the boards, splinters flying. The whispers screamed, the shadow lunging, its hands cold on his shoulders, pulling him back. Jake fought, slamming the paperweight again, and the boards cracked, moonlight spilling through. He was close, so close. But his body froze again, his hand dropping the globe, reaching for the pen. "Right," the scribe said, its voice everywhere, and Jake's fingers closed around the pen, his mind fogging, the photo of Amos and the others, burning in his hand. He was losing himself, becoming part of the story just like Amos. The pen moved, scratching his name on the desk, and the whispers cheered, the shadow wrapping around him, its eyes endless. Jake's other hand, still free, clutched the torn notebook pages, and he thought of Linda, her warning, her tired eyes. He wasn't Amos. He wasn't theirs. With a scream, he tore his hand from the pen, the pain like fire, and threw himself at the window, the boards splintering under his weight. He fell into the newsroom, glass and wood cutting his arms, the shadow howling behind him. The whispers followed. "You can't leave." But he crawled to his desk, the notebook pages crumpled in his fist. The screens were still typing, the footprints spreading, and the shadow was coming, its form filling the office door. Jake had to burn the rules, had to stop the scribe. But the newsroom was closing in, and his own hand was turning against him, itching to write. Jake Turner crawled across the newsroom floor, shards of glass and splintered wood from the editor's office window cutting into his palms. The Dayton Chronicle's air was icy, the shadows twisting around him like living things. The leather, notebooks' torn pages, the rules that held the scribe's curse, were crumpled in his fist, their edges burning his skin with a cold that wasn't natural. The whispers, a chorus of voices chanting, "Right, Jake, right," echoed from every corner, and the shadow of the scribe, tall and jagged with too many eyes, loomed in the editor's office doorway, its form pulsing like smoke. The computer screens, unplugged but glowing, typed endlessly. "Join us, Jake. Tell our story." His body ached, his hands still twitching from when the scribe tried to make him write, but he'd broken free, barely, and now he had to burn the rules or lose himself forever. The notebook's last page had said it. To stop the scribe, burn the rules, but pay the price. Jake didn't know what the price was, but he couldn't wait to find out. The scribe wasn't just a ghost, it was a hunger, feeding on stories, trapping souls like Amos Reed's in 1929, and now it wanted him. He staggered to his feet, blood dripping from his cuts, and scanned the newsroom for anything to start a fire. No matches, no lighter, just stacks of old newspapers and a coffee mug that smelled like regret. The shadow moved, gliding closer, its whispers turning to a growl. "You can't stop the story." Jake's eyes landed on the break room. Door, half open down the hall. There had to be something there, a lighter from a smoker's stash, a stove, anything. He ran, his sneakers slipping on papers marked with black footprints, the shadow's cold breath on his neck. The break room was small, cluttered with a microwave, a fridge, and a table covered in crumbs. He yanked open drawers, tossing forks and napkins until he found a box of matches, half empty but enough. "Yes," he whispered, clutching them like a lifeline. The whispers surged. "No, Jake." And the shadow filled the doorway, its eyes gleaming, blocking his way out. He ducked, under the table, heart pounding, and struck a match. The flame flickered, weak but alive, and he pulled the crumpled notebook pages from his pocket. The rules glowed faintly, the red ink pulsing like blood. He held the match to the pages, but the flame died, snuffed out by a gust of wind that wasn't there. The shadow laughed, its voice Amos's maybe, or something older, deeper. "You can't burn us," it said, and the table shook, flipping over, sending Jake sprawling. The matches scattered, and the shadow lunged, its hands cold and sharp, pinning him to the floor. Jake screamed, thrashing, but the shadow was heavy, its eyes endless, pulling him into darkness. He saw flashes, Amos Reed, pen in hand, writing as flames consumed the newsroom in 1929. Other faces, co-workers from decades past, their eyes blank, typing forever. "Join us," the scribe said, its voice in his head, and Jake's hand twitched, again, reaching for a pen that appeared in his hand, glowing black. He dropped it, the pain like ice, and remembered his mom's voice from years ago, telling him to fight for what was right. He wasn't Amos. He wouldn't be their ink. He grabbed a match, striking it on the floor, and this time the flame held. He pressed it to the notebook pages, his hands shaking, and they caught, burning blue, not orange, the smoke thick and sour. The shadow screamed, its form unraveling, and the whispers turned to wails, the newsroom shaking, desks cracking. Jake's cuts burned, his blood mixing with the ashes, and he felt a tug in his chest like something was being ripped out. The price. The flame grew, consuming the pages, and the shadow retreated, its eyes fading. But the wails didn't stop. They were, in him now, a chorus he couldn't shake. The fire died, the pages ash, and the newsroom went still, the computer screens dark. Jake staggered to his feet, the shadow gone, the whispers quiet. But his body felt wrong, heavy, like part of him had burned with the rules. He stumbled to the front door, hoping it would open now, but it was still locked, the deadbolt mocking him. The black footprints were back, not on papers but the floor, leading to the editor's office, where the door was wide open again, moonlight pooling inside. He had to know if it was over. He crept to the office, his legs trembling, and saw the desk, its surface carved with his name, the pen still there, glowing faintly. A new paper lay beside it, written in his handwriting though he hadn't touched it. "The scribe is hurt, not gone. It needs a new writer." Jake's heart sank. He'd burned the rules, paid a price, his strength, maybe his soul. But the scribe wasn't dead. The photo of Amos and the 1929 staff was on the desk now, their faces clearer, and a new face was there, faint but growing, his own. The whispers came back, softer, not in the room but his head. "Finish the story, Jake." He backed away, the pen rolling toward him, and tripped over a stack of papers, each with a black footprint, each with his name. The building shook again, a low rumble, and the editor's office window, cracked from his earlier fight, shattered, glass raining down. Moonlight flooded the room, and Jake saw it, the shadow, not in the office but outside, standing on the street, watching, its eyes locked on him. He ran to the newsroom, his breath ragged, and grabbed his notebook, the one he'd used for story notes, now half filled with words he didn't write. He tore out the pages, ready to burn them too, but his hand stopped, frozen, like the scribe was still inside him. The whispers grew. "Write, or they'll come for you." And he saw them. Shadows, not just one but many, moving outside the windows, circling the building. The price wasn't just his strength, it was his freedom, his life, unless he gave the scribe what it wanted. Jake fell to his knees, the pen in his pocket now, though he didn't remember picking it up. The newsroom was a prison, the shadows closing in, and his own hand was betraying him, itching to write. He thought of Linda, her warning, her tired eyes, and wondered if she'd known, If she'd fought this too. The shadows pressed against the windows, their whispers a roar, and Jake knew he had one last chance to fight, or he'd be Amos, writing for the scribe forever. The shadows pressed against the newsroom windows, their shapes twisting like smoke, eyes glinting in the moonlight that spilled through the shattered glass of the Dayton Chronicle. Jake Turner knelt on the cold floor, his breath ragged, the glowing pen in his hand trembling as it tried to force him to write. The whispers of the scribe, a chorus of voices that weren't human, roared in his head. Finish the story, Jake. His notebook, once filled with his own story notes, was now scrawled with words he didn't write, pages curling with black footprints. The ashes of the notebook's rules, burned to stop the scribe, lay scattered, their sour smoke still stinging. His lungs. He'd paid a price. His strength, maybe part of his soul, but the scribe wasn't gone. It was here, in the shadows, in his hand, in the newsroom, and it wanted him to be its next writer, like Amos Reed in 1929. Jake's cuts from the broken window throbbed, his blood mixing with the ash on the floor, and his body felt heavy, like the scribe was still pulling his strings. The photo of Amos and the 1929 staff, with his own face faintly appearing, was crumpled in his pocket, a reminder of what he'd become if he gave in. He thought of Linda's warning, "Don't stay past 7," and her tired eyes, like she'd seen this before. He couldn't let the scribe win, couldn't let it trap him forever. He dropped the pen, its glow fading, and staggered to his feet, the shadows outside the windows hissing, their shapes clawing at the glass. He needed a way out, not just from the building, but from the curse. The notebook had said to burn the rules, but that hadn't been enough. He scanned the newsroom, the desks littered with papers, the computer screens dark now, but the black footprints were spreading, creeping up the walls like mold. The editor's office, where the scribe's shadow had first appeared, was still open, its desk carved with his name. Maybe there was something else, another clue, a way to end this. He grabbed a stapler, the only weapon he had, and crept toward the office, his sneakers crunching on glass, the whispers following. "You can't stop us." Inside, the air was sour, like rotting wood, and the desk was a mess, papers scattered, the pen he'd fought glowing faintly again. He avoided it, his eyes landing on the bookshelf where the 1929 photo had come from. He yanked books down, their covers dusty, and found a small metal box locked tight, hidden behind a stack of old journals. His hands shook as he pried it open with the stapler, the lid creaking. Inside was a single page, torn from a diary, dated October 14th, 1929, the day before the fire. It was Amos Reed's handwriting, spidery and frantic. "The scribe lives in the ink. Burn the stories, not just the rules. Use blood to seal it. I failed. Don't be me." Jake's heart sank. Burn the stories? The newsroom was full of stories, decades of newspapers, articles, notes. And blood? His own? He was already bleeding, his cuts dripping. But the idea made his skin crawl. The whispers surged. "Write, Jake!" And the pen on the desk rolled toward him, the shadows outside slamming against the windows, cracking the glass. He grabbed the diary page, stuffing it in his pocket with the photo, and ran back to the newsroom, the box clattering behind him. The shadows poured in now, not just outside but inside, slithering across the floor, their eyes locked on him. He needed fire, more than a match. The break room had a microwave, maybe a gas line in the old stove. He bolted down the hall, the shadows chasing, their cold hands brushing his back. The break room was dark, the table still flipped from his earlier fight, matches scattered. He grabbed them, his hands shaking, and saw the stove. A rusty relic, but it had a pilot light, maybe still working. He twisted the knob, praying, and a spark flared, the flame small but steady. "Come on," he whispered, grabbing papers from the floor. Old articles, memos, anything with ink. He tore pages from his notebook, the ones the scribe had tainted, and fed them to the flame, the fire burning blue again, like with the rules. The shadows screamed, their forms flickering, and the whispers turned to static. The newsroom shaking harder, lights flickering despite the dead power. Jake's cuts burned, his blood dripping onto the papers, and he remembered Amos's note. "Use blood to seal it. He pressed his palm to the flame, wincing, his blood sizzling, and the fire roared, spreading to the table, the papers, the shadows shrinking back. The whispers wailed, "You'll pay." And Jake felt it, a sharp pain in his chest, like something was tearing free, the price of defying the scribe. The fire spread, licking the walls, and Jake stumbled back, the heat searing his face. The shadows regrouped, their eyes blazing, and the pen was in his hand again, glowing, forcing his fingers to move. He dropped it, screaming, and ran to the newsroom, the fire chasing him, the shadows chasing him. The front door was still locked, but the windows were shattering now, glass flying, and the shadows were everywhere, their voices a roar. "You can't burn us!" Jake grabbed a chair, smashing it against a window, the glass giving way. But the shadows were on him, their hands cold, pulling him back, into the editor's office. He fell, the diary page slipping from his pocket, and saw the desk, his name, carved deeper now, the pen waiting, the photo glowing, his face clearer among the 1929 staff. The whispers were in his head, not the room, chanting, "Write or die." His hand reached for the pen, his body betraying him, but he saw his mom's face, her voice from years ago. "Fight, Jake!" He tore his hand away, grabbing the photo instead, and threw it into the fire spreading from the break room. The flames flared, green now, and the shadows screamed, their forms unraveling, the photo burning, his face fading from it. The newsroom was chaos, fire licking the walls, shadows retreating but not gone. Jake's chest burned, his blood on the floor, the price still taking its toll. He crawled to the front door, the whispers fading, the pen's glow dimming. The door was hot, the fire spreading, but it clicked, the deadbolt sliding open like the scribe was letting him go, or daring him to try. He pushed it, moonlight flooding in, but the shadows were still there, outside, waiting, their eyes endless. He'd burned the stories, used his blood, but the scribe wasn't dead. It was hurt, and it was angry, and Jake was still its target. The front door of the Dayton Chronicle creaked open, moonlight spilling into the smoky newsroom where Jake Turner stood, his hands bloodied and trembling. The fire he'd started to burn. The scribe's stories had died down, leaving charred papers and a sour smell of ash. The shadows that had circled the building, twisted, eyeless things, were gone, melted into the night, but their whispers still echoed in his head, faint but sharp. "You can't stop us." The pen that had tried to force him to write was dark now, lying on the floor. But Jake's chest ached, like the scribe had taken something from him when he burned its rules and stories. His notebook, the photo of Amos Reed's 1929 staff, the diary page, all were ash. But the curse wasn't broken. It was waiting, and he could feel it. Jake stumbled onto the sidewalk, the cool Ohio air hitting his face like a slap. The street was empty, Dayton's downtown silent, the newsroom's red brick facade looming behind him. His cut stung, his blood crusted on his palms, and his legs were jelly, but he was out. He'd fought the scribe, burned its stories with his blood, and lived, barely. He thought of Amos, the editor who'd burned the newsroom in 1929, and the photo where his own face had started to appear. Was that his price? A piece of his soul, tied to the scribe forever? He patted his pocket, half expecting the pen or notebook to be there, but found only his dead phone and a crumpled matchbook. He needed help. The police, Linda, anyone. He staggered to a payphone down the street, its booth scratched and rusty, and fumbled for change. The call to 911 was quick, locked in the newsroom. A fire. He was fine, but needed someone to check. The operator sounded bored, promising a patrol car, but Jake didn't wait. He couldn't go back inside, not yet. He sat on a bench, his breath fogging in the cold, and tried to piece it together. The scribe fed on stories, used people like Amos, like him, to keep writing. He'd heard it maybe, but those shadows, those whispers, they weren't gone. They were watching. The police arrived an hour later, 2 officers with flashlights who didn't buy his story about a haunted newsroom, but noted the broken windows and charred break room. "Kids messing around, probably," one said, eyeing Jake's cuts. They let him go, telling him to get cleaned up and come back for a statement. Jake nodded, too tired to argue, and walked to his apartment, a small place a few blocks away. He showered, the water stinging his wounds, and collapsed on his bed. But sleep didn't come. Every creak in the building sounded like footsteps, every shadow like the scribe's eyes. He kept the lights on, the matchbook on his nightstand, just in case. Morning brought a gray sky and a call from Linda. "Jake, what happened?" she asked, her voice tight. The newsroom was a mess. Burned papers, shattered glass, desks moved like a storm had hit. Jake told her a half-truth. He'd stayed late, got locked in, started a small fire by accident trying to get out. He didn't mention the scribe, the rules, or the shadows. Linda was quiet, then said, "I told you not to stay past 7. You're lucky you're okay." Her tone wasn't just worried, it was knowing, like she'd seen this before. "Take a few days," she said. "We'll handle it." Jake couldn't stay away. He went back to the Chronicle that afternoon, the newsroom buzzing with co-workers cleaning up. Linda was there, sorting papers, her eyes avoiding his. The editor's office was sealed off, the desk still carved with his name, though no one mentioned it. The pen was gone, the photo gone, but the air was heavy, like the building was waiting. Jake helped clear debris, his hands shook when he touched papers with black footprints, faint but there, smudged on old articles. Nobody else saw them, or they pretended not to. He found a new note on his desk, in his handwriting, though he hadn't written it. "The story isn't end." His stomach twisted. He showed it to Linda, who paled and pulled him into the break room, now smelling of smoke and bleach. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered, her eyes sharp. "The thing that lives here." Jake nodded, his throat tight, and told her everything, the notebook, the rules, the scribe, the fire. Linda's face hardened. "It's been here since the 29 fire," she said. "Amos wasn't crazy. He tried to stop it like you did. I found the rules once, years ago, but I never stayed late. You're in it now, Jake. It's got your name." She handed him a small silver key, worn and cold. "Found it in the editor's desk, after the fire. It's old, maybe Amos's. Keep it. It might help." Jake took it, the metal heavy, and asked, "Help how?" Linda shook her head. "I don't know. But don't stay here after dark. And don't write anything, not a word, unless you have to." She left, her footsteps quick, like she couldn't get out fast enough. Jake pocketed the key, its edges sharp, and looked at his desk, where the notes still lay. The words darker now, like fresh ink. The newsroom felt different, quieter, but not safe. Co-workers whispered about the break-in, avoiding Jake's eyes. He checked the editor's office, the door now unlocked, and found the desk clean. His name's carving gone, like it had never been. But the air was sour, the shadows too long, and the key in his pocket warmed, like it knew something he didn't. He left before 7, the streets of Dayton gray and foggy. But he felt eyes on him, from the newsroom's windows, from the alleys, from nowhere. At home he locked the door, the key on his nightstand, and tried to sleep. But the whispers came back, faint, in his head. "Right, Jake." He checked his notebook, the one he'd torn pages from, and found a new page, written, in red ink, not his. "The scribe sleeps, but it dreams of you." His heart raced. He'd burned the stories, paid a price, but the scribe was still here, in the ink, in the newsroom, in him. The key glowed faintly, like it was waking up, and Jake knew he wasn't free. The shadows were waiting, patient, and the story wasn't over. The silver key glowed faintly on Jake Turner's nightstand, its edges sharp against the dim light of his Dayton apartment. The whispers of the scribe, soft but persistent, lingered in his head. Right, Jake. His notebook, once a tool for his journalism dreams, lay open on the bed. A new page scrawled with red ink he didn't write. "The scribe sleeps, but it dreams of you." The Dayton Chronicle's newsroom, with its charred papers and black footprints, felt a world away. But Jake knew better. He'd burned the scribe's rules, its stories, even used his blood to fight it. But the curse wasn't gone. It was in the key Linda gave him, in the ink, in him. The shadows he'd seen outside the newsroom hadn't followed him home. but he felt their eyes, waiting, patient, for the story to continue. Jake hadn't gone back to work. He'd called in sick, his voice hoarse, his cuts from the newsroom fire still raw. Linda texted once, asking if he was okay, but he didn't reply. He couldn't face her, not after she'd given him the key, not after her warning about the scribe. The key was old, maybe Amos Reed's, the editor who'd burned the newsroom in 1929, trapping himself and 4 others in the scribe's curse. Jake held it, its warmth unnatural, and wondered what it unlocked. A door, a secret, or something worse. He hadn't slept, afraid of what he'd see in his dreams, afraid his hand would pick up a pen and start writing for the scribe. He needed to end this. The diary page from Amos had said to burn the stories and seal it with blood. But Jake had done that, and it wasn't enough. The key was his last clue, his only weapon. He remembered the metal box in the editor's office, where he'd found Amos's note. Maybe the key fit it, or something else hidden in the newsroom. He couldn't stay away. Not if the scribe was still whispering. Not if his name was still in its story. He grabbed the key, a lighter, and his notebook, tearing out the page with the red ink, just in case. The fog outside his window was thick, Dayton streets silent, but he felt a pull, like the newsroom was calling him back. The Chronicle's red brick building looked older at night, its windows dark, the broken ones boarded up. Jake used his employee key to get in, the front door creaking, the air inside sour and heavy. The newsroom was quiet, desks cleared of the fire's mess. But the shadows were wrong. Too long, curling like fingers. His flashlight beam shook as he moved to the editor's office, the key warm in his hand. The desk was clean, the carving of his name gone, but the metal box was still on the shelf, its lock rusted but intact. He slid the key in, his heart pounding, and it clicked, the lid popping open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, not old like Amos's diary, but new, written in black ink. The scribe's heart is the ink. Spill it, burn it, but you'll never be free. Below it was a small glass vial, filled with black liquid that moved like oil. Alive. Jake's stomach twisted. The ink. Was this what the scribe lived in? What Amos had fed with his stories? His soul? The whispers came back, not in his head but the room, soft and urgent. Finish it, Jake. He grabbed the vial, its glass, cold, and the shadows moved, slithering from the walls, their eyes gleaming. He backed out of the office, the vial in one hand, the lighter in the other. The newsroom was alive now, papers rustling, computer screens flickering on, typing his name. Jake, right. The shadows circled, not attacking but watching, waiting. He remembered Linda's words. Don't write anything, not a word. But the vial was the key, the ink, the scribe's heart. He had to destroy it. He ran to the break room, where the stove's pilot light still worked, and poured the ink onto a pile of papers. It smelled sharp like blood and rust. He flicked the lighter, the flame catching, and the ink burned, not blue or green but black, the fire roaring, the shadows screaming. The newsroom shook, desks cracking, windows shattering, and the whispers turned to a wail. You can't. Jake's chest burned, his cuts bleeding again, his blood mixing with the fire, sealing it like Amos had tried. The shadows lunged, their hands cold, but the fire pushed them back, the ink bubbling, the scribe's heart unraveling. Jake saw flashes. Amos, writing in flames. The 1929 staff, free at last, their faces fading. His own face, almost gone from their story. The pain was unbearable, like his soul was burning, but he held the lighter, the fire his only weapon. The white flames died, the ink ash, and the newsroom went still. The shadows gone, the screens dark. Jake collapsed, his breath shallow, the key cold in his pocket. The whispers were silent, the air lighter, but he felt hollow, like the scribe had taken something he'd never get back. He staggered to the front door, now unlocked, and stepped into the fog, the Chronicle behind him, quiet but not safe. He'd spilled the ink, burned the scribe's heart, but the paper in the box had warned him. You'll never be free. The curse was hurt, maybe broken, But it was in him, in the newsroom, in Dayton's fog, waiting for a new writer. Jake didn't go back to work. He moved to Columbus, took a job at a coffee shop, far from newsrooms and ink. He didn't write, not a word, afraid his hand would betray him. Linda called once, saying the Chronicle was normal now, but she'd quit, her voice shaky. Nobody mentioned the fire, the shadows, or Jake's name on the desk. But in Dayton, the newsroom stood, its windows dark, its papers still. A new editor, young and eager, stayed late one night, finding a pen on his desk, glowing faintly, and a whisper in the air. Write. The scribe slept, but it dreamed, and the story was never truly over. And that's the end of the curse of the newsroom. Did Jake really stop the scribe, or is it still out there, waiting for the next writer to stay too late? What would you do if you found that notebook in your office? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. If this story gave you the creeps, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more spooky tales every week. Got a weird story from your job? Tell us about it, and it might inspire our next video. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and maybe don't work late tonight. See you next time.